Welcome to Forum at 360. I'm your host, Jeremy Hsieh. Joining me today are reporters Kelly and Jennifer Canfield. We're holding a reporters roundtable with our guests, Gubernatorial candidate Bill Walker and his running mate for Lieutenant Governor Byron Mallott. Mallott and Walker were opponents, both running for governor on separate tickets until recently. They merged their tickets to improve their odds of unseating incumbent Republican Governor Sean Parnell. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Why don't you start by explaining how this unity ticket came about?
You know, I think it came about a couple of different ways. One is, Byron and I spent the last year on the campaign trail together and got to know each other pretty darn well and pretty comfortable with each other, and sort of began to realize how compatible we were, how many areas we agreed on. But then it came down towards the end, and a few weeks ago, I started looking at a number of polls that were done, kind of doing the simple math. And it certainly appeared that neither of us were going to be successful at replacing the incumbent governor, but together the numbers showed that we would. And we realized that both of us were more interested in doing what's best for Alaska than necessarily a political career of any sort. We both got into this we think Alaska can be much better than it is. So because of that, it made sense for us to sit down and have a discussion about, which actually took place, I guess it was 2 Fridays ago, before the 3-day weekend, to see is this possible.
It was important for me to determine 3 things. One was to make a final personal determination that in a 3-way race, neither Mr. Walker nor myself, could win. And that became clear to me. Then I had to make the judgment as to how it might be appropriate within the trust and the obligation that I had incurred as a Democratic candidate to have the party release me from that pretty profound obligation. And more than that, I wanted the party to come with me to the new campaign. And third, I had to be able to trust Mr. Walker. The third was the easiest, and the other 2 couldn't have happened without that. But during the course of the campaign, with a little bit of help from Governor Parnell, because he didn't appear at but one of our events, I believe, during the entire 10 or 11 months that we were campaigning across the state, I'd come to know Bill. I'd listened to his campaign talks, found that there was nothing discordant. Certainly we had different nuances on many issues, and that was one of the key issues in making this determination, was that our views so much overlapped, and I had come to trust.
Looks like Casey's chomping at the bit here to ask you if
Certainly.
I was just curious, how much were each of you concerned about alienating your respective bases? Because you mentioned
certainly,
the Democratic Party.
That was a critical consideration for me. And of course, to make a very long and complicated story very short, ultimately the Democratic State Central Committee voted 89-2 to both release me from my obligation and allow me to join Mr. Walker's independent ticket as his lieutenant gubernatorial candidate, but also the Democratic Party said that they would support this ticket. I think it's important.
And Bill, for you, how much were you concerned?
You know, it was my base we overlap some. I certainly have a conservative base, and so there was certainly some questions how it would be reacted to. But we also had received a lot of encouragement I had from within my base saying, do something. I mean, do the math. I mean, look at you guys have an opportunity, see if it can happen. So the reason, we began this on that Friday was I wanted to be able to say to my base that we had done everything we could to see if that was a possibility. So that was that initial meeting was all about. Is this even possible? Because I just felt I owed that to my supporters to say at least we tried everything.
And critically important was that we each had a running mate already. And so as Bill emphasizes, this was a 4-person decision. If any one of us had said, no, we need to continue the course we're on, we couldn't have put this together. So my lieutenant gubernatorial candidate, Hollis French, had to agree, and Craig Fleener, Mr. Walker's running mate, had to agree. Those conversations took place. They were very gracious. They're very honorable men, and we were able to move forward.
And was there any hand-wringing on your part? One of the conditions of getting the Democrats' endorsement was that you'd have to leave the Republican Party, correct?
It was a matter of changing my party registration. I've never been I've been registered as a Republican, but I've never participated in any of the party leadership, so it wasn't. I'm still, a conservative. And I'm running as an independent. So now I am matching what I'm running as. But I looked at all the major movement of everybody else in this four-way deal. I mean, Craig Fleener, Hollis French, Byron Mallott. For me to basically align myself with the independent, running on independent as independent candidate, that was not as undeclared. That was not a difficult decision for me, just because I was just so in awe of what so many people had done to make this happen. And so for me to run as undeclared, 53% of Alaskans are registered as nonpartisan undeclared. So, and that's what I'm really running as in my ticket. So really I match what I'm running as. So that really, I didn't think that was out of line at all.
One other question about the lieutenant governorship. The role doesn't have many responsibilities formally in the Constitution or in state law. What do you see, Byron, as your role in a Walker administration?
Actually, could I answer that?
Sure. I was just going to say I could be the Maytag man, but I'd like for Mr. Walker to comment.
Byron and I, this is a little unconventional what we're doing, and it's never been done in the history of our state. And so we look at this more of our role will be more of more of a partnership arrangement. I will certainly look to Byron as a senior advisor on issues. We've talked about having, his office. There will be an office down the hall, not the traditional one, but he'll also have an office in the governor's office, end of the wing as well. And it'll be. I will always make the final decision as governor, but it won't be without input and counsel with Byron. We're really going to look at working together once we get into office, the same way we work together to get there. And so it'll not be a traditional. Of course, he will certainly cover the traditional roles and the constitutional mandates of statutory mandates of the lieutenant governor. But there's going to be so much more that we're just going to have a very different working relationship. We're excited about that.
Okay.
Do we want to get into some questions on the issues?
Sure.
So we're really curious about mega projects, how you guys plan to approach some of those. The state is looking at billions of dollars in projects across the state, actually. We've got the natural gas pipeline that we're looking at, Susitna-Watana Hydro, Kabata, and Juneau Access Project. Any of those projects would you guys not support if you were elected?
Well, I think we need to do. I mean, one of the reasons that drives us is the fiscal situation the state is in. We're in the biggest deficit we've ever been in. We're in a daily deficit. We draw down on our savings at a rate of $7 million per day, according to Scott Goldsmith of ICER. So we need to get that out on the table to begin with, to say, look at where we are financially, and then what ones of these projects can we afford to do. So it's not a matter of whether we want to do them or not, it's whether or not we can do some of these projects. So we really have to have a realistic look at the ones that have a return, and all of them have a return. Some are different than others, but I think we have to look at them all on the table and decide what realistically can we do.
Well, let's talk about a few of the other projects here, because we both know that you guys support some version of the gas pipeline in whatever form that comes. But I mean, what do you think about Kabata? or what do you think about Juneau Access? I mean, do you think that those have a return on investment? Do you think that they're worthwhile to pursue?
You know, I think it's worthwhile to, I mean, I know that the competing issue on the Juneau Access is the ferry system versus the road and those, and you know, we'll take input on both. I'm not sure sitting here today we can you know, pick one versus the other. The marine highway system is absolutely critical to not just southeast, also south central as well has a role with Alaska Marine Highway System. So that's just, that goes without saying. On the, but I don't want to skip over. I don't want to look like I'm skipping over one question you had about the gas pipeline. I have been involved in that since 1978, and I've been the LNG guy since 1978, and so I was not a fan of going down, taking our resources into a market that doesn't need it in the lower 48. So we'll certainly look at that project, and I'm a believer in. Many administrations come in and they just sort of wipe everything off the table and they start over again. And I'm not a start over again person. I want to finish some projects and figure out what we can do, and then do some projects and stop studying the ones that we can't do, because we spend billions of dollars on studies of projects that may or may not ever happen. So let's find out what can be done. The gas pipeline, I think, is absolutely critical because of the incredible revenues it would bring to Alaska, and the low-cost energy and the clean-burning energy in parts of Alaska that now have air quality issues. So I think that's important. But I first will look at because of all the confidentiality, we don't know what's been done. We need to look at what's been done, what's been accomplished, and decide. My first choice is to continue the process under what's started, assuming that makes sense on the day we're sworn in.
So what do you think your administration will do that's different from what's been done already?
One of the things that is important to each of these questions is that the state's fiscal crisis is exactly that. It is a crisis, and it must be addressed. It must be confronted. It must be acknowledged, as Mr. Walker says often. And it is so significant that for us to say we favor this project and not that project, or this is something that we must do, we believe that everything needs to be on the table. Every major project needs to be evaluated in light of the state's fiscal circumstance. And that requires a process. It requires Alaska leadership reaching out to Alaskans, those affected, those concerned, those that will be impacted. And the administration will have to look at a $500,000 project in Queetlik just as it will Kabata, and make, hopefully amongst Alaskans, so that Alaskans agree with the process, and even if they disagree with the final result, say, this makes sense for Alaska. We haven't had that kind of outreach. We haven't had that kind of conversation and dialogue in decision-making in Alaska for a long time, and that's important to get back to.
Let's get at some of the budget issues related to the repeal of Senate Bill 20, or the failed repeal of Senate Bill 21. You guys both campaigned for the repeal of Senate Bill 21, the last big oil and gas tax rewrite. Will your administration take another look at oil taxes even after this failed repeal?
You know, what I've said in the past before the vote, I said, you know, I will follow the wishes, the will of the people on this issue. But what would be different with us is that we will make sure that the public is aware of, is there no oil being explored for? You know, is it revenue neutral, as we were told? You know, is it going to increase? Is it increasing the throughput of the pipeline? Those kinds of things. We will make sure that the public has all that, has the best available information on all of that. And I think that's been a bit of a handicap in the past. A lot of that's been kept confidential. The public needs to know that. I mean, and there's no reason for the public not to know that. So what we'll do is we'll take the assurances that were received during that process that this is what was going to happen, and the public will know, is it really happening? And so I think that will be what we would be different. You know, if the legislature takes up a revision of some sort, we'll certainly take a look at that. But it's not something that we're driving, or we're going to. You know, this is not a sort of round two on that issue. There's so many other issues we need to deal with. So many other issues, you know, that are important to Alaska. That's a critical one. Don't get me wrong. But to spend our time, you know, wrestling with that single issue, it went to a vote. The people spoke, and it's up to the legislature if they want to make a modification.
Did you have a follow-up, Jen?
No, actually, I had another question if you want to. So The current administration has been involved in several lawsuits during Governor Parnell's tenure that have taken an aim at tribal sovereignty and subsistence, namely Katie Johns, Simmons v. Parks, and another case that recently the state is appealing against tribes who want to run their own child support programs. If elected, what will be the nature of your relationship with tribes in the state?
This will be a new administration in that regard. Mr. Walker and I have had extensive conversations, and he had already taken positions that allowed me to be comfortable, as I said, with joining his ticket. On subsistence, we need to make it work. We need to work toward a unified management system under state management. But we need to reach out to every segment of Alaska that is concerned and affected by that issue. And hopefully, if not consensus, achieve a majority view that allows us to move toward real action as opposed to confrontation. Tribes have a role in the state of Alaska. They are, as Bill says, a local government. And they have responsibility. They're recognized by the federal government. The state needs to, and as you mentioned, lawsuits and court rulings have been very clear that the state needs to have a more robust involvement and consideration of the role of tribes in our state, and that will be something we will work toward.
Do you think both of you, I know so the Alaska Federation of Natives, which you've been affiliated with, Byron, has been bring up a lot of steam with their subsistence war chest, and they seem to kind of have their eye on the prize there. If a constitutional amendment to give Native priority on subsistence, would you guys support that, both of you?
Well, let me say this about that process, having been involved in the past on pretty much all of the subsistence efforts, is that it won't get to major consideration across the state without the involvement of the administration. And the involvement of this administration will be measured, it will be deliberative, it will be responsible, and it will work toward doing it in a way that doesn't end as past efforts have in failure and everybody going to their silos and not having the opportunity to continue any kind of dialogue. Our campaign is all about bringing Alaskans together, and we just have to work at that.
You know, we can't guarantee an outcome, but we can't guarantee a process. And we guarantee a process that involves bringing, all stakeholders to the table and have that discussion. And until we have that, I don't think we're gonna move forward. On the litigation, and all too often, this administration has reached in the toolbox and brought out a piece of litigation. We'll have a cup of coffee with folks, and we'll have a discussion with them first and see what can be worked out across the table. Once litigation is started, it's just changed to different dialogue at that point, and sometimes it's the wrong dialogue because the line is so bright between the discussion. And we're just a group of Alaskans. I mean, we should be able to sit down and have some discussions about this and sort some of this out without racing to the courts for it.
Let me interrupt real quick and say, if you're just joining us, this is Format 360, and we've been speaking with Gubernatorial candidate Bill Walker and his running mate Byron Mallott. On that issue, a lot of that's focused internally on the ideas of what the Department of Law is doing. There's been a lot of effort expended on lawsuits with the federal government and federal overreach issues. Can you comment on that and how your administration might be different or the same?
Well, I think that there are times for that. I'm not saying that there aren't, but I guess I would start with one example is when the President of the United States came to Alaska. Our governor didn't meet with him. We will meet with the president when he comes to Alaska, and he's on his way to a trade mission in Asia, talking about more export from the U.S. to Asia. Well, that would have been a great opportunity for us to meet with him and find a seat on the plane to say, let's go with you. So we're going to start with a conversation, really, and I think that sometimes is stepped over that step and we just immediately started into a battle of some sort. You know, I'm a fair states' rights person. Don't get me wrong, but I sometimes think the process doesn't result in a timely decision on some of the issues we need resolved quickly. What they say is one of the quickest way to slow something down is throw it into litigation and things just sort of grind to a halt. So that is certainly an option, but not nearly as reach for as quickly as we've seen recently.
Particularly the role of the federal government is huge in rural Alaska. The federal government has a far larger role in rural Alaska than does even the state of Alaska. The federal government is the largest landowner in our state. A point of confrontation often, but it's also an opportunity for us to work collectively together. The federal government is Alaska's largest trading partner, as it were. And of course, Alaska is a member of the Union of the United States. And so, we must work hard to work together in hopefully a mutual interest, but always in Alaska's interest. And as Bill says, you need to be very sure that Alaska's interest is being served, but to collaborate, to try to build partnerships, I believe will be a hallmark of this administration.
Let's switch gears momentarily. There's 3 ballot initiatives on the November general election ballot, and just get your quick take on all 3 of them. Do you support requiring legislative approval of large-scale mines in Bristol Bay?
Yes.
Yeah.
So those 2 yeses. What about minimum wage? Do you support increasing the minimum wage?
Emphatically.
I do.
And marijuana legalization, where do you stand on that?
I'm going to vote personally no, but it's not a large campaign issue for me.
Yeah, I'll be voting no as well.
Okay. On the question of the mine in Bristol Bay, do you support an underground mine as opposed to an open pit mine? Is there any way that you can see that project working out?
You know, my concern on the Bristol Bay mine, I don't know enough. I mean, there's no permit has been submitted, so it's hard to tell what, we're sort of in a bit of speculation as far as what they're going to do there, and so that's my concern about it. This, based upon what I know at this point, I'm not in favor. That's not saying there couldn't be something that could be done in such a way that would make it, if you completely remove any risk of damage to the fish, we certainly could. I would certainly take another look, but we don't see that at this point. We don't really see what their method is, and to us, for me to sort of second guess how their method is of extraction, it would be difficult.
I believe that the EPA process underway now is appropriate, but I do not support the idea of a preemptive decision by the EPA. I would hope that the EPA is more measured and nuanced in its deliberations, but as of now, all of the information that we have seen and we know collectively is out there, the Pebble Mine is a mine too far.
Switch gears again,
Yep.
maybe? So on social issues, I know.
Can I move back 1 second
Oh,
to your question?
please.
Your
Sure.
question really was, do we want the legislative approval on big mines? That initiative is specific to that specific mine, that particular, and that right now there's a requirement in oil and gas development, and this add the mining to that same piece, whatnot. So it is specific to that. I want to make sure that was clear in that. So,
Thank you.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, it's okay. So back onto social issues. You've said numerous times that you're not running on social issues, but they're going to come to your office no matter what. Case in point, earlier this summer, 5 gay couples filed to challenge this state's ban on same-sex marriage. While the ban was approved by voters, U.S. Attorney General Holder has said that attorneys general in all the states do not need to defend laws that they believe are discriminatory. So if the same-sex marriage ban is struck down in federal court, will you fight the decision?
That is still it's also in court here as well, and so that's a judicial process that's going to play out, and we'll follow. When I put my hand on the Bible and I'm sworn in and uphold the laws of Alaska, I'll uphold the laws of Alaska. I'm not out to, what I've said is I'm not out to modify what's in place when we come into office. I'll follow the law that's modified, assuming it is modified, and those issues that come across my desk will be a decision that will be made in a collaborative process. I'll have the ultimate say, but I'll consult with Byron, I'll consult with my Attorney General, consult with the folks on both sides of the issue, and the last one I'll consult with will be Byron again, and then I'll make my decision. But that's not what brings me to the race. There are those issues out there that are going through the court system, and we'll follow the direction from the court.
So you would or you would not challenge a decision?
I'd have to see a decision before I decide if I'm going to just challenge or not. That would be part of the process because, with our fiscal situation that we have right now at $7 million a day, for us to be going just involved in litigation just for purposes of being involved in litigation, I'm not in favor of that. So that's why I say I need to see the specific piece of legislation or the decision itself to see if it makes sense for it to expend. Litigation is expensive. So does it make sense to continue that or not? That'll come into play as well on the cost side.
If the state were in a better fiscal situation, could you see yourself challenging in court other social issues?
I would have to look at the specific decision before I could make that call. But again, the process would be the same. It would be a collaborative process, of which I'll make the ultimate decision, but I'll receive input from all sides, all parties associated on both sides of that issue.
One of the ways that this administration must work to make what we have promised a success is that we focus on issues that bring us together and that must be addressed, as opposed to those issues that can trip you up. I believe, Mr. Walker, I am pro-choice. I am one who believes in absolute equality and ultimate personal decision-making about the issues that affect their lives and their circumstance with other people. But I believe what Mr. Walker has said. I respect his beliefs. We will work collaboratively to move Alaska down the road in a positive way. And that's one of the reasons we've come together. Far too long, we let those issues that divide us lead public policy. It's crippled Washington, D.C. It's crippled Alaska in the legislature and in the administration. And we're dedicated to trying to figure out ways to move us positively down the road in order to deal with the real day-to-day issues that affect Alaskans.
We'll have to leave it at that. We've run out of time for this forum at 360. We've been speaking with Bill Walker and Byron Mallott. We've invited Governor Sean Parnell and his running mate, Dan Sullivan, to join us for a future roundtable. Thanks for joining us on Forum at 360.